Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corina Garcia, and I am the Assistant Extension Agent for Family and Community Health in Webb County. Today we have our roasted kale and caramelized onions, okay? This recipe is super good. It's a really big hit in the office every time we make it. We made it a couple weeks ago, and we're excited to make it again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that everything that I'm touching is clean, make sure my workspace is clean, and make sure that my veggies were washed. So my kale and my tomatoes over here. My onion also is protected by that outside layer, but you want to make sure that the outside is clean, because if you touch that and then you peel it back and then you touch the inside, then the inside's going to get a little bit dirty too. So everything is washed and it's clean. I'm going to go ahead and sanitize my hands. I washed them earlier, but just so y'all can trust me. How about that? So I'm going to go ahead and sanitize, and then I have some gloves here that I'm going to put on. And these are always so tricky. Alrighty, y'all. This recipe is super quick to make at home. Probably less than 5 minutes of prep time and around 12 to 15 minutes of cooking time. So if you're at home, once everything's clean, you can go ahead and preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? So we're going to move on to our step number 3, and it's line our baking dish with parchment paper. If you have a baking dish that doesn't easily, like, things stick to it pretty good, you have to line it with parchment paper so that none of our stuff sticks to it. But a lot of our stuff here, nothing really sticks to it. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that step. But if you're at home and you want to make sure you're keeping your baking ware clean, and you don't want to do a lot of scrubbing, then you can go ahead and line it with parchment paper. Alright, so let me go over the ingredients with y'all. I have the recipe here. And y'all, whenever you're doing your recipes at home, what I've done is I have it printed, or if you have it in a little booklet, you can go ahead and put it in a clear slip. That way you're not going to get your recipe super messy if you're going to want to use it again in the future, okay? So I have mine here. And so the recipe calls for 4 cups of kale with the spines removed and chopped. So if you look at the kale, it kind of looks like my arm here. So you have the spine, and then you have like the leaves that come out, right? So the spine doesn't really taste too good. So we're gonna remove that spine because it is really fibrous. And so we'll just be left with the little leafy greens, and those crisp up really good in the oven. Then we're gonna use a 1/2 pint of cherry tomatoes, 2 teaspoons of olive oil, 1 onion sliced, sorry, 2 teaspoons of balsamic vinegar, and 1/2 cup of feta cheese. Okay, so that's all. So this is pretty much a dump, mix, throw in the oven kind of recipe. Okay, super easy, y'all. So let's go ahead and get our kale. So it says 4 cups of kale. So I have my kale here, and I'm going to put it in this bowl. Okay. And it's okay if some fall over. It doesn't have to be an exact measurement. So that's 1. 2. 3. And 4. Alright, y'all, some quick facts about kale is kale is a nutrient-dense, dark leafy green. And it contains vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, antioxidants, fiber, folate, magnesium, what else? Calcium, and potassium. So can you believe that all of that is in here? Okay, so we prefer dark leafy greens to regular light colored greens like iceberg lettuce or romaine, just because dark leafy greens like kale, spinach, and collard greens have a lot more inside of them than others do. So next I'm going to have my cherry tomatoes. You're more than welcome to leave them whole, and you're more than welcome to cut them into fourths if you think that halves are too big. But I think that halves are okay, and sometimes I like to mix it up. So I'll have some of them, and then the other half I'll leave whole. So that's what I'm going to do here, and I'll show y'all what it looks like when we bake it later, okay? All right, so how many of y'all eat kale on a regular basis? Okay, I can tell you right now that I don't eat kale on a regular basis, but when we did this recipe for the first time, I ate it for like a week straight. Okay, super, super good. Give it a try. And I wasn't too big of a fan of kale before. One time I had a bag of kale chips and it didn't really taste that great. And then when I tried this recipe, it was a lot better. So sometimes you just need to try food more than once. So don't be afraid to try food more than once, because you never know if you're gonna like it. Maybe you just didn't like how it was prepared, right? Next is my onion. So I'm gonna use 1 onion sliced. Okay. So I cut off the top, and then I'm gonna cut it in half where the root is, because I wanna keep that root. Did y'all know that when you cut the root of the onion, that's what makes you cry? So there's a lot of little chemicals in there, and not bad chemicals, just like chemicals that are, you know, home to the onion. And when you cut it, you release it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, and then you have to take a break from cutting because you're crying the whole time, or you're crying for other reasons, which I'm sorry. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice it. If you see here, y'all, these slices can be as thin or as thick as you like them to be. So mine are going to be a little bit thin, just because I know that when they go in the oven, they're going to soften up pretty nicely. And I forgot to tell y'all about cherry tomatoes. So cherry tomatoes are packed with nutrients and antioxidants such as lycopene. Okay, does anybody know what lycopene is, or have you heard of lycopene before? So lycopene is I have trouble saying this word, carotenoid that gives tomatoes their red color. Okay, so if we had carotenoid in our body a whole lot, we would probably be a little bit red too. Okay, so it's like, that's like the color, you know, it's a pretty good color. Okay, so here's my half onion. And if you when you're cutting your onion, you want to go ahead and peel back the layers. That way they all kind of get coated when we put olive oil in a little bit. Because if they're all bunched together, it's going to come out of the oven all together. And we want them to be pretty individual. And this will be a lot easier at home when you don't have gloves on, right? Okay, so let's cut our other half of our onion. And peel this layer back. Forgot these guys. Okay. So for these, I'm just going to give them like a medium slice. They're not super thick, they're not super thin. Just a regular slice. And then here's my root, okay? So super easy for that. So same thing again with the onions. Oop, oop, oop. What other dark leafy greens do y'all like? I like spinach. Sometimes I don't like to eat spinach that much because it's really wide, and so I'll cut it before I eat it, when I eat it raw, because then the salad dressing gets all on the sides of your mouth. And so easy fix for me, I just cut my spinach, right? And that's still root. Alrighty, y'all. So here we have all of our stuff. So I have my onions. You can see some tomatoes in there. There's the kale. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little toss like this. Okay. And next, I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of olive oil. Okay. So I have my measuring spoon here. This is teaspoon and this is tablespoon. The way you can remember it is the way I taught the kiddos. Okay. Teaspoon is teensy little, like a little teacup. And tablespoon is big like a table, okay? So that's an easy way to remember that. So let me go ahead and get 2 teaspoons of our olive oil. That's 1. And that's 2. All right. Okay. And if you look at the recipe, y'all, you could notice that there is no salt added. We didn't add any salt. We didn't add any pepper, because a lot of our flavors are going to come from our later ingredients, like balsamic vinegar, and the salt is going to come from your feta cheese, okay? So I like to tell people it's easy to add salt, but it's hard to take away, okay? So if you taste it and you think it needs a little bit, go ahead and add a little bit. But if it doesn't, then you don't need to add it. And then you can save yourself the worry of your high blood pressure, right? So salt is the main culprit for our high blood pressure. Okay, so everything is mixed around, and then I'm going to transfer it to a baking dish. So this is the baking dish I had here. And then this is going into the oven for how long? Do you remember? It's going in for 12 minutes or 15 minutes, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pop it in the oven. Okay, and so I made it beforehand so y'all didn't have to wait, right? So here it is. I'm gonna lay this down just in case it's a little warm. Okay, so here it is, y'all. If you can see here, the kale roasted a little bit, so it got a little dark and it gets a little bit crispy. So now we're going to add our 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. So I have my balsamic vinegar here. Ooh, I love that sound. Ready? Then I'm just gonna drizzle it on top. And then I'm gonna mix it later with some tongs, okay? So that's 1 tablespoon. Next is the 2nd tablespoon. All right. Okay, I'm gonna give that a quick toss. Ooh, looks good, y'all. If you can see the tomatoes, I left some whole. So sometimes they'll come out like that, or they'll come out blistered like this, which means that the skin is peeling off from itself. And some people like to leave it like that because when you bite into it, it'll just burst with flavor. And then some people don't like that big burst of flavor, so here are the little pieces. So I cut these into 4ths. So whichever one you'd like to use for your dish, it's not going to change the flavor of it in any way. Just more so texture. We have some friends that are more sensitive to textures. Okay, so that's a good mix. And next is our 1/2 cup of feta cheese. Okay, so I'm gonna get my measuring cup. And we're gonna get a 1/2 cup of feta cheese. Okay, this is where our salt comes from, remember? Oops. And I think that's a good 1/2 cup. So we're just going to put it here. Then we're going to give it another mix, okay? Look how awesome these colors are. Got my greens, my reds, my whites. Kind of reminds me of like a flag, right? All these different colors. And this is super, super quick, y'all. I didn't spend too much time doing this. You can have all of this stuff ready, and one of your family members can pop it in the oven before you get home, or you can make it before you go to work, pack it for your lunch. Okay, so now let's plate it up. So I'm going to try and get everything here. Okay, onion, kale, oops, got like no tomatoes on there. And let's get a little one. Alrighty, let's give this a try. Let's see, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Let's see if it's good, right? Yes, okay. Super, super good. I hope you all get the chance to try this at home with your family. Super easy to involve your kiddos. Super easy to also involve your husbands if they don't like cooking, so just kind of get them in the kitchen. But yeah, I hope y'all give this a shot. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow, okay? Bye.